She said it was book club. Room 204 had other plans. It started with a paperback I didn't recognize and a lipstick I did. The book lay face down on our kitchen counter like a sleeping animal, mass-market romance with a cover the color of summer bruises. The lipstick was Mara, vanilla smoke, the shade that pretended innocence and left a criminal record on mugs. She texted that morning, breezy as a postcard, "Book club tonight, babe. Don't wait up." I'd sent back a thumbs up because I was still the kind of man who preferred the suggestion of approval to the blunt effort of questions. By 7, the apartment had the nervous quiet of a room before a confession. I could feel the lie moving around in it, choosing chairs. I found the book's receipt tucked inside as a bookmark. 2 items, the paperback and a room service charge from the Harborview, a hotel whose optimism was in the name, not the view. Room 204. The timestamp was last Thursday at 9:18 p.m., exactly when Mara had texted me a photo of a wine glass, captioned Merlot and Mayhem with the girls. The glass in the receipt's photo had a lemon wedge and a sugared rim. Mayhem had a sweet tooth, apparently. I told myself there are 1,000 explanations for any given detail, and only one needs to be true. I told myself the room service could have been for someone else. The hotel could have a bar open to the public. Receipts get misfiled. Life is a parade of mix-ups. Then I put on the shirt she said made me look like I'd gotten enough sleep, and I went out, carrying the receipt in my pocket like a vowel I hadn't decided where to place. At the Harborview, the air smelled like citrus and old carpet. The lobby bar tried for nautical and landed on divorced yacht broker. I sat where I could watch the elevators and the mirror behind the bottles. My phone vibrated with a text from Mara. "Don't forget to water the basil plant. She's dramatic." The basil did droop like it had fainted at the idea of neglect. I thumbed back a water droplet emoji and felt like I deserved an award for acting. "You look like a man waiting to decide who he is," a voice said to my right. I turned to find a woman about my age in a black raincoat, a constellation of raindrops jeweled on the shoulders. She had the unbothered posture of someone who had made bad choices and survived them. Her mouth was curved in a way that made me think of promises and courtrooms. "I'm waiting for someone," I said, which was both true and not the whole truth. "Aren't we all?" She placed a hand on the bar and made a little circle with her finger to summon the bartender without looking at him. "I'm Sloane." "Nate," I said, "because names are cheap until you place a bet on them." She ordered club soda with lime, which I took as a small declaration of war on temptation. She slid a hotel key card out of the pocket of her coat and tapped it against the bar the way you might tap a pen against a test you're not ready to take. "The elevators are slow," she said. "It gives them time to decide whether to bring you up or let you off the hook." "You've done this before?" I asked. "Performed the complicated act of supporting a roof while it collapses," she smiled. "Once or twice." "Room 204, I heard myself say, the way a drunk says the name of the person who broke his favorite rule. She didn't even flinch. "Huh," she said, glancing at the directory on the wall. "2 floors up from me. Maybe the hotel stacked us by theme." "What theme is that?" "Attraction and alibis," she said, and sipped her soda like a secret. I should have been alone with whatever I was about to become. Instead, I let Sloane stand next to me in the elevator, her coat brushing my sleeve, our reflections lining up in the chrome. We didn't speak, and there are silences that are more intimate than most confessions. The elevator's bell chimed, an optimistic sound that didn't know who would hear it. On the second floor, the carpet was the color of exhausted sky. We stopped outside 204. My plan, if I had one, had not included knocking. It felt primitive, like entering a cave to see what the animals had left. Sloane put her ear to the door with a practical tenderness I wouldn't have known how to imitate. The noise on the other side was not the soundtrack of a book club. There's a hum people make when they believe the world has shrunk to the size of a bed and you can hear it in your bones. "We don't have to do this," Sloane whispered. "We could go be kind to ourselves instead." "I don't know how," I said, softly enough I could pretend I hadn't. She led me down the hall and into the stairwell as if we were changing scenes in a play. The stairwell was utilitarian, concrete sincerity, fluorescent light. We stood a step apart, as strangers and not. Sloane's hand found the railing. My hand found the same railing. The warmth of her fingers near mine did a reckless, helpful thing to my breathing. 15 years, I said. Marriage, not the hotel. 7, she said. Same not notes. We didn't kiss. That would have made it a different story too soon. We stood there until my chest stopped trying to kick through my ribs. When we went back to the hallway, 204's door had opened and closed. The safety latch hadn't been thrown, as if the room wanted more company. I took a step forward and then stopped. The anger I thought I would feel was not there. In its place, clarity, cold as a coin on the tongue. We left without knocking. In the elevator down, our shoulders touched because that's what elevators insist upon, and because our bodies were smarter than our etiquette. The bar had softened into the hour when people tell bartenders things they shouldn't. Sloane and I took a table in the corner with a warped tabletop that wobbled when you breathed. "Tell me something true that doesn't hurt to say," Sloane said, and it felt like medicine. "Last week I bought a piano app and learned to play the left hand of Hallelujah," I said. It sounded like a funeral for a bird. She smiled, a real one this time. "I can't stand cilantro," she said. "It tastes like ambition gone wrong." She looked at me over the rim of her glass. "I'm not sure what your rules are tonight, Nate, but one of mine is, no pretending we're strangers to ourselves." "What are your other rules?" I asked. "Nothing that needs a door to feel exciting," she said, and slid her foot against mine under the table, a quick, scorching punctuation mark that still somehow belonged on daytime TV. "Everything that reminds us we're alive without borrowing the feeling from someone else's betrayal." We talked until the bartender stacked chairs elsewhere. I learned Sloane was a civil engineer who liked old bridges for the same reason I liked old songs, the way they carry weight without making a speech about it. She learned I wrote copy for a furniture company that believed adjectives could sell someone a future. We traded tiny details like smuggled contraband, the scar on her wrist from a middle school cat, the way I hold a pen like a secret and not a tool. When she touched my wrist to illustrate the angle of a truss on a bridge, I realized how starved I had become for a touch that didn't arrive with an agenda. At 2, we walked into a rain too light to be real weather. Outside, the Harborview sign flickered, as if reconsidering its career. Sloane hailed a ride and then turned back to me, rain constellating her hair. She slid her hand to the back of my neck, not pulling, just locating me. I stepped closer like it was the most civilized thing I'd done in months. The kiss we had was the kind that knows the difference between hunger and theft. Her mouth was warm and patient and not an argument. We pulled apart with the shared, startled quiet of people who have returned to their bodies after a long absence. "We're going to be careful," she said, half question, half vow. "I want to be," I said, and I meant both of us. When I let myself into our apartment, the basil plant looked melodramatic and fine. On the table, a note from Mara. "Stayed at Val's after book club, too much wine, sorry babe, don't be mad." There was a little heart she doted the way a child draws a balloon. I put the note in the drawer with the warranties and manuals, the place for things that tell you how to fix something if you catch it early enough. The next morning, Mara kissed me with mint and apology. She said she was starting a new project at work and would be late all week. She wore the vanilla smoke like punctuation. I made coffee and lied by omission. The day moved forward with the heavy grace of a ship turning in wind. Sloane texted at noon. "How's Basil?" I sent a picture of it perked up like a witness ready to testify. She replied with a photo of a bridge under construction, cables like harp strings against a washed-out sky. We met 2 days later at a cafe with windows so clean you could drink the street with your eyes. We sat in the corner that makes flirting seem like a civic duty. We practiced the eroticism of restraint, knees almost touching, voices kept at a frequency only we could hear. We smiled like accomplices and refused to audition for villains. "Do you want revenge?" I asked. "No," she said. "I want oxygen." Her thumb grazed the inside of my wrist, and I swear I could read my own pulse like a new language. When Mara's book club met again, I did not follow. I took the piano app more seriously. The left hand learned its responsibilities, then the right. The song became something I could live with. I watered the basil. I looked at myself in the mirror long enough to admit I wasn't innocent or noble, just a man taking inventory. Confrontation arrived as these things do, not with a bang but with brunch. Mara invited me to meet her on Sunday at the Grange, a place with French toast that could make you forgive a childhood. She looked lovely in the specifically careless way of someone auditioning for absolution. Halfway through a story about her new campaign, she set down her fork and slid her ring back and forth like she was checking whether it still fit. "I've been thinking," she said, and my stomach went all the way wrong. "About us, about what's fair. A lot of couples are expanding their definitions. We love each other, that's the core. Maybe we can let some air in around it." I put the Harborview receipt on the table the way you might set down a blood test. I didn't speak for a moment because I wanted to hear what silence would do to the truth. Mara's face went still, the particular still of a dancer who has missed a step but knows the move after the one she missed. "You went through my things?" she asked, a defense as old as locked doors. "The receipt went through yours," I said. "I just followed it home." Her eyes shone, not with tears but with options. "It was one time," she said. "It didn't mean anything." "I think meaning is exactly what it had," I said quietly. "It meant something about us I wasn't brave enough to say first." She tilted her head, applied sincerity like foundation. "We can try an open arrangement," she said. "We set rules, we communicate, people do it." "You set your rules and then invited me to sign," I said. "That isn't open, that's retroactive permission." She did cry then, a glistening performance that made the server pretend she didn't see us. When the check came, I paid because something in me was apparently old-fashioned even at the end of a fashion. Outside, the sun had the nerve to be tender. We stood on the sidewalk with our hands in our pockets like kids waiting for a bus, and I understood that I was done with the idea of convincing anyone to love me correctly. I moved into a small apartment with an honest hallway. I took half the kitchen spoons and the framed print of a lighthouse that never looked like it would help anyone. The first night alone, I played the melody I had learned until it sounded like a toothbrush in another room, ordinary and not tragic. Sloane came over with olives and a loaf of bread that had to be torn rather than sliced. We stood in my kitchen at the counter and used our hands, and I felt more married to the present than I had in years. We didn't rush our bodies into solving what our mouths couldn't. We let one sit with us, elbow on the table, listening. Sloane's hair smelled like rain with stubbornness in it. She touched the back of my neck the way you lay a palm on a warmed brick. When we did kiss, leaning against the refrigerator, it was slow and explicit only in its honesty. The fridge hummed approval. My shirt wrinkled where her fingers were sure they belonged. We laughed mid-kiss because joy has good timing when it's invited. Nothing came off but the performance. We left each other still dressed, deeply messed up in the best possible way. Mara texted sometimes, out of habit or hope. I answered politely. The last message she sent said, "I miss what we had. Please remember the good." I did. I remembered mornings when we were amateurs at kindness and better for it. I remembered how she rested her cheek on my shoulder at red lights. I remembered that love is a house that requires, above all, showing up for the repairs. What I couldn't forget was the way she'd preferred a rented room to a difficult conversation. Months later, I walked past the Harborview at dusk, and the sign had been repaired so cleanly you'd never know it had once flickered. I went inside and sat at the bar with a club soda because I like rituals that don't try to steal from me. I watched the elevators with the friendliness you have for an ex-neighbor's dog. I didn't expect anything to happen. Sloane walked in wearing a dress the exact blue of my favorite lie. The sky at 7 p.m. when you promise yourself you'll only stay out for one drink. She saw me without surprise, the way people do when a scene has already been rehearsed in the head. She sat, and we aligned our knees like coordinates. "Room 204 is empty," she said, glancing at the directory. "We outlasted it." "Rooms don't last," I said, "just stories." "Then let's keep writing hours in places without key cards," she said, and her smile was the opposite of contempt. We left through the revolving door, a machine built for exits and returns. Outside, summer had decided to be generous. Sloane took my hand and threaded her fingers through mine with the simple authority of someone who has chosen. We walked along the harbor, where the water wore the day's light like a memory you actually want. She pressed her shoulder to mine, not for balance, but for claim. I thought about how desire can be a weapon or a lantern, and how I was done with the former and grateful for the latter. We stopped where the railing is warm from the sun, and Sloane leaned in, her mouth so close I could taste the shape of what she hadn't said yet. The kiss, when it arrived, felt like an answer with no need to show its work. Somewhere a bell rang, maybe a buoy, maybe a bicycle, and for a second the city was as quiet as a yes. I used to think betrayal was the end of a story. It's not. It's the point where you stop borrowing your lines from people who want you to whisper. It's the first clean note in a song you finally decide to learn with both hands.